my big book of stories and rhymes. Stories and rhymes in this book were previously published by Ladybird Books Limited, and teddy bear tales, animal stories, nursery rhymes, and stories for bedtime. Illustrated by Peter Stevenson. Puss in Boots. Once there was a miller who had 3 sons. When he died, he left his mill to the eldest son and his donkey to the second son. The youngest got Puss. This made him most unhappy. "What can you do with a cat?" he protested. "Cats don't even make a decent stew." Puss overheard that and spoke up quickly. "You'll find you haven't gotten such a bad deal, master. Just give me a bag and a pair of boots and you'll see what I can do for you." Surprised, the boy did as the cat asked. Puss pulled on the boots and admired himself in the mirror. Then he took a lettuce and a juicy carrot from the pantry and marched off into the woods. There he opened the bag, arranged the lettuce and carrot inside, and hid nearby. Soon a tender young rabbit came along. He smelled the tasty vegetables and hopped inside the bag. In a second, the puss leaped up and tied the bag tight. Instead of taking the rabbit to his master, however, Puss headed for the palace, where he asked to see the king. Bowing low, he said, "Your Majesty, I bring a present from my master, the Marquis." The king was delighted. For 3 months, Puss brought so many presents to the palace that the king began to look forward to seeing him. Then at last, the day Puss had been waiting for arrived. "Don't ask any questions, master," he said, "but go and swim in the river this morning." Puss knew that the king would be driving nearby with the princess his daughter. Later that morning, as the king's carriage went by the river, Puss came rushing up all a-tremble. "Help, help, help!" he gasped. "The Marquis, my master, is drowning!" Immediately the king sent a regiment of soldiers to the rescue. But Puss had not finished. He told the king that while his master had been swimming, robbers had stolen his clothes. In fact, Puss had hidden his master's rags in some bushes himself. The king lost no time in sending for a suit of clothes for the Marquis. Puss's master was feeling very bewildered at his sudden change of name, but he was clever enough to keep quiet. As soon as the Marquis was decently dressed, the king invited him to ride in his carriage and meet his daughter. The princess took one look at the Marquis, now dressed to the nines, and fell in love with him. Meanwhile, Puss ran ahead. Soon he came to a field where some men were mowing grass. "Listen," he cried. "The king is driving this way. When he asks you whose field these are, you tell him they belong to my master the Marquis. If you don't, I'll have you chopped into little pieces." Then Puss ran on a little further and came to a field where some men were cutting wheat. He repeated his instructions. Then on he ran again, and whenever he met anyone, he told them the same thing. At last he came to the ogre's castle. Slowly the king's carriage followed in Puss's tracks. Each time he came to a group of workers, the king asked them, "Whose fields are these, my good men?" Of course, he always got the same answer. The king was amazed at how much land the Marquis owned, and so was Puss's master. Meanwhile, Puss was very busy at the castle. "Ogre," he said, hiding a shudder at the ogre's bad breath, "I've heard that you have the most amazing magical powers." "Well, yes," said the ogre modestly. "For instance," Puss went on, "I've heard you can change yourself into a lion." In a flash, the ogre changed himself, and Puss fled to the top of a cupboard, out of harm's way. When the ogre had returned to normal, Puss came down, brilliant," he said. "But changing into something small, like a mouse, must be impossible for a big fellow like you." "Impossible?" laughed the ogre. "I can do anything." In a flash he changed into a mouse, and Puss ate him. Seconds later the king arrived at the ogre's castle. You can guess who owned the castle now. Puss met the carriage at the castle gates. "Come this way," he said. "A feast awaits you." The ogre had been planning to invite a few friends over. By the end of the day, Puss's master, the Marquis, was engaged to the princess, and by the end of the week they were married. And Puss? Well, he lived to a ripe old age, using up every one of his 9 lives, and he never needed to hunt a mouse again. But sometimes he did, just for the sheer fun of it.